Blog Talk Radio.
Good evening. Welcome to Blog Talk Radio's Transition Aging Parents for Tuesday, November 12th, 2013. And welcome to our fifth year of broadcasting. I am Dale Carter, your host, coming to you live from South Bend, Indiana. Here at Transition Aging Parents, my mission is to provide you with information and insight so you can help your parents thrive and find joy in every stage of their life. This evening, I am happy to be joined by Shellie Kerman. If you're a family member or caregiver for an older adult, you are going to want to hear from our guest who has walked the journey with her mother-in-law for 8 years after a diagnosis of Alzheimer's. Before I introduce Shellie, I want to provide some key information for myself and our show today. I invite you to visit my website following the show to obtain your free e-course, 5 Essential Strategies to Help Your Aging Parent Face Change. And you can also learn how you can get my book, Transitioning Your Aging Parent, a 5-step guide through crisis and change. Both serve as a resource for you with clear steps, real-life examples, and resources. You are there for your parent. Let me be there for you with this e-course and book. After the show, I invite you to visit my website, transitionagingparents.com. On with our show. Our call-in number is 347-857-1461. You can also reach our show by going to blogtalkradio.com/DLC and submit your questions for Shellie via the online chat feature. Just a moment. Shellie Kerman is the new Director of Community Relations at Northwoods Village at Edison Lakes. Shellie came to this position with 10-plus years of marketing and community relations experience in healthcare. She made this transition to be more personally involved with people who are the end user of her outreach efforts. Her responsibilities include working closely and personally with residents and their families to support their well-being and satisfaction, managing the dissemination of information about Northwoods Village at Edison Lakes to residents and families, the public, and the media, and coordinating all resident events and personal tours. Northwoods Village at Edison Lakes is the first standalone memory care assisted living community in northern Indiana. And Shellie has personal experience with memory care that she will put to use as she interacts with the future residents of Northwoods Village. Well, Shellie, welcome to our show this evening. I really appreciate you being with us.
Well, thank you, Dale. I'm honored to be here.
Well, this is a really important and very timely topic. There are so many families out there facing the challenges of being a caregiver to their loved one. And I'm going to share a couple of statistics with our listeners right now to just give them a feeling for how prevalent this disease is. Great. One statistic tells us of all Americans aged 65 or older, 1 in 8 has Alzheimer's disease. Of those individuals 85 or older, almost half have the disease. And now the next statistic is the one that's really going to hit home with caregivers. After being diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease, most individuals live an average of 4 to 8 years, with some living as long as 20 years. So I think it's really important for us to bring the stories and messages to the public, like Shellie is going to share this evening, to really let us know what it's like to walk that journey as a caregiver and be prepared to walk that journey for sometimes many years. So, Shellie, can you share with us what brought you to work with the elderly and their families?
Sure, Dale. I was very happy in the position I was doing in healthcare with marketing and community relations. I enjoyed my work very much. But there was just one piece that was missing. I dealt with a lot of people, but not necessarily the people, the seniors or the patients that we did our community outreach for. That was left to the clinical staff in a healthcare setting. And then the second part of the reason that I'm here and doing what I'm doing is because my mother-in-law was diagnosed with Alzheimer's approximately 8 years ago. And as I look back through that journey, gosh, I wish I knew then what I know now. And I know that's something that many people say often in many different situations. But I kind of decided that if I took a dual approach and I could still use my skills in marketing and community relations, still do the things that I enjoy doing, but also intertwine that with helping families that are going through the same challenges that my family went through when my mother-in-law was diagnosed with Alzheimer's.
Right. You can really empathize with the families. You know what they're going through.
Absolutely. It's not an easy time. It's very confusing. It's very stressful. It's heavy on the heart. You're dealing with a loved one that all of a sudden is not really the same person that they've always been to you. It's difficult in many, many ways.
Well, you know what? Let's talk about your mother-in-law because Marcille was diagnosed 8 years ago with Alzheimer's. Could you share a little bit with us about how that diagnosis happened and how that process went for you and your family?
Sure. We had spoken to her family physician several times and had expressed some concerns, some things that we were noticing. She repeated herself a lot, asked the same questions over and over and over, would misplace things. But he didn't seem to really recognize any of that and didn't want to put a label on it, didn't want to give a diagnosis. At the time she was 80-plus years old, and he said she's very healthy, which she was. She had great blood pressure. She didn't have any sugar problems. I mean, all of her, to look at any blood work or any clinical information on her, she was very healthy for 81, 82 years old. So he wasn't looking at what we were talking about. So we did decide as a family to try another doctor. We took her to an internal medicine doctor who we shared our concerns with, and he gave her the test, the aptitude test, to see how her memory was and how she was functioning, and shared with us the scale on how she should score and what the different levels of points that she would score, what that would mean. And, of course, in the beginning when he started administering that test to her, her score was borderline, but each time that she would go back to see him, the score would be less and less. And he did say he did diagnose her with Alzheimer's. It was a long process. It certainly isn't something like going in and having blood drawn and the doctor calling you and saying, yes, your blood shows you have diabetes or whatever. It was a long, drawn-out process, and when the diagnosis came, it wasn't easy to take, and some of the family members had real mixed emotions.
And that's another challenging part of the disease. You're trying to help your loved one, but then the family members can be all over the map with their reactions to it. Could you share a little bit about how your family members acted differently to the information?
Sure. I think her daughter probably was really in denial. And I think, no disrespect to her, but that's her mother, and you don't want to admit to yourself or think that Mom has a disease that's going to totally change her or take her from us. And so it was very tough in the beginning because some of us in the family believed the diagnosis and wanted to do what the doctor was recommending, wanted to, take precautions and steps toward keeping her memory and her brain as healthy as possible for as long as possible. But when there were other members in the family that were basically in denial and would always find an excuse for her symptoms, it was hard to proceed with what probably maybe would have been the right thing to do at the time, had we all been in agreement, I guess, is kind of a nice way to say it.
Yeah, and that is so often the case, Shellie, isn't it? Families find it so hard to come to agreement.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
How did you? I mean, I often, ask, and we want to learn from this. How did your family finally come to agreement, or did they ever?
Well, we came to agreements on decisions that had to be made at the time that it was, the 11th hour. Luckily, we never had any terrible emergency, but there would be things, mile markers, that would happen that would convince those that maybe were in denial that, okay, we do need to make the next step. We do need to take that next step to protect her, to keep her safe. And so that's kind of how the progression went with Marcille. She, we kept her in her own apartment for a long time, and in my opinion, too long. And if there had been, as you said, I work for Northwoods Village, and we're assisted living for memory care specifically. And if there had been some place like that for Marcille to move into back 8 years ago, her situation right now might be a lot different. But she didn't want to move, and the family, some of us thought that it was best, and some of us thought that it wasn't. And so you just kind of take the middle road and do what you can to get through each day.
Was there in your family like a primary caregiver or somebody who was designated power of attorney? Do you want to share that with us?
Sure. Her son, which is my husband, and his sister are her only two children. And my husband is her power of attorney. And they really, both him and his sister, they pretty much do everything together as a joint decision. They have a very close relationship, a very respectful relationship, and even if they both have a totally different opinion, they come to some sort of compromise so that neither one feels that the other is going against what the other one thinks. And sometimes that's difficult, but they're very close, and they're not going to let anything come between them. They're not going to let they're not going to let there be hard feelings over decisions that are made. They truly do, and I think it's great. I mean, I think some families would have really let this tear them apart, and they didn't. They absolutely didn't. Not that, I think sometimes Sharon wishes we had done one thing, and my husband wishes that we had done one thing, but they just don't, they come to an agreement, and that's what they stick with, and they move forward.
Well, and that really is the kindest and most loving thing to do for their mother. Exactly.
And I'm sure that gives her great comfort to know how close they truly are and how much neither one of them would ever do anything to go against the other. Just They just won't.
Yeah.
And so I'm sure she, I know she knew that at one time, and if she doesn't know it now, but I'm sure that's something that she was very, very proud of, as she should be.
Right. Could you share with us, you said at one point she moved into an apartment. Can you share with us how many different changes in care and living situation that she has gone through in 8 years?
Sure. We had just moved her out of their family home. Her husband, my father-in-law, had passed away, and she stayed in their family home for, probably 5 to 7 years. And we really, after the first couple of years of him passing, we were trying to talk her into, let's downsize, let's get you into an apartment where you don't have upkeep, you don't have yard work, you don't have to worry about any of that. We finally talked her into that, moved her into a senior living apartment, like independent living. Got her in there, got her comfortable. She learned to enjoy it and like it, and had adjusted very well to it. And shortly after that is when she was diagnosed with Alzheimer's. And so immediately, you start talking about what options are out there. And for a long time, she did pretty good on her own. As long as she was in her normal daily routine, she seemed to do pretty good. She was good with her personal hygiene. She kept her apartment clean. Anything that she had done on a routine basis, she was pretty good with. Now, if somebody called her and wanted to take her to lunch, or there was a family function or anything out of the ordinary, then it really threw her off. So she stayed in that apartment for quite some time, quite a few years, and it got down to the point where she would go outside of her apartment and then not be able, even if she just went down to get her mail, didn't even leave the building, she wouldn't be able to figure out which door then it was that led to her apartment. So she would tend to get lost, and the people there were very good to her and would help her. Then it even got to the one time we did find out that she had been out walking within the apartment grounds outside and didn't know for sure which building was hers. And so that really scared us. And then it got to the point where the doctor told us, her scores are low enough on these tests that she really isn't safe to be on her own anymore. She could leave the stove on. You just never know. She could wander off. And so then we did end up moving her into, we thought it was going to be a memory care unit in assisted living, but it ended up being that she moved into basically a skilled community. And they do have memory care there, but they really didn't even put her in the memory care, which I still don't understand. But I don't know if they thought she was too far advanced or what, but she is still to this day in a skilled nursing facility. And, she does pretty well. She still knows who we are. So that's good. I mean, to me, I think that's a good thing for the family, to know that she still knows who we are. Makes us feel better, I guess. So.
Yeah. So did she really need to be in a skilled nursing facility? You said she was so healthy.
Well, and I didn't think she did, no. Now, since then, she's had a few other health issues, and of course, every time she has a health problem, then it slows her down that much more, and she doesn't bounce back, of course, like she used to. She's 90, she'll be 91 this spring, and I know she has had perforated bowel that they gave her a 10% chance of surviving, and she did survive. She has a strong will. But from that point on, she's pretty much been wheelchair bound, and so she was even on hospice for a while. They actually did take her off of hospice, which you don't hear happening very often. But
isn't that amazing? The human body and spirit are so resilient, aren't they?
It is. It really is.
Oh my gosh.
She had the perforated bowel, and then about 2 years later, she had a strangulated hernia, and they did the surgery. And before they took her into surgery, either my husband or sister-in-law said to her, she said, my mother-in-law said, it's not my time yet. I'm not ready to go yet. And one of them said to her, well, Mom, if it is your time, don't worry about it. You've had a good long life, and you'll be reunited with Dad. That'll be good. And she said, I don't want to be with Dad. I want to be with you kids.
Aww. Wow, she has really, you got a lot of spirit and will, like you say.
She does. She has a strong will to live, that's for sure.
Wow.
So, but she went through many, from her apartment to the nursing home, and times when we were going in, every evening to make her dinner, to make sure she had taken her pills, to, we spent a good year at least where between, the two of us, my husband and I, and then her daughter, one of us was always there in the evening to make sure everything was okay. So it was kind of a long journey. But,
it is, and it's really a blessing that you have your husband and his sister to help. It sounds like everybody helps in the care.
Yep, we did.
Yeah. What is the hardest part now for all of you, now that you've been doing this for 8 years and she's progressed? Is there something that stands out in your mind as being the hardest part?
Well, definitely the hardest part for me personally was moving her into the skilled nursing community. Like I said, she was so healthy. That was difficult. I knew she couldn't be on her own anymore. I knew that wasn't safe. But I just wish there had been more options for us as to where we could move her.
Right.
And so that, for me personally, that was the hardest part of the whole thing. Was just knowing that that's basically where we had to put her. So.
Right. It's about looking for those options, and I think sometimes the people searching for those options aren't even aware that there are other options out there. You most likely were aware, and that was the only option, but we probably should do another show where we talk about the different options for our listeners. Yeah.
Absolutely.
How has this journey with Marcille changed you and your husband and the rest of the family?
Well, I think it definitely makes the whole family kind of step back and take a look at what's really important in life, more so with your relationships with your loved ones, and the time that you spend together and the quality of that time that you spend together. I think, at first when she was diagnosed, and even before she was diagnosed, she was repetitive and she would say things that just didn't make any sense, and we blamed her for that in the beginning. We weren't always the most patient with her in the beginning, and I think, if nothing else, we definitely all learned a lot, and that's part of what's brought me to where I am today, as far as learning about Alzheimer's and how do you communicate with people that have Alzheimer's or any memory impairment. and how important things are as far as keeping them engaged and not to disagree with them, not to redirect them, but to just talk with them wherever they are, whatever they're talking about. You have to meet them where they are. You can't expect them to come to you and to be here today in the present, because sometimes they're just not capable of that. And so really we've all learned a lot, and it really has brought to the forefront what's most important in a family, and that's the closeness and the, you know, making every minute count, and just to be there to love one another, you know, to be a support system for one another. So that's probably the biggest thing in our family.
Yeah, when we use that word journey, that really is what you've been on. Absolutely. I mean, you were at a totally different place in your perspective when she was diagnosed than you are now. I mean, you all had to learn together.
We did, and it's funny, we all kind of learned at different speeds in different ways, but we've all gotten there, and we all have gotten there in our own way, which, you know, really is important. So it's been a huge learning experience, that's for sure.
But I think what you said is so important for our listeners to take away, is it's really the quality of a family's relationship, and and the quality of the time they spend together. That's such an important point.
Yep.
If a listener has just received the diagnosis of Alzheimer's for a loved one, could you maybe share 3 things from your journey that you would advise them to do, like at this point in time?
I would say try really, really hard not to be in denial. It's very important that you educate yourself, learn all that you can about Alzheimer's, or, you know, the memory impairment that your loved one has been diagnosed with. Don't put it off, and don't wait until there's a crisis situation to make some decisions. And the decisions are hard, but really, truly, the sooner you make those decisions, I really think the easier it is on everyone, including that Alzheimer's patient. I think that oftentimes people think by waiting that they're doing the right thing, because their loved one doesn't want to move or doesn't want to change the way they live. But really, the sooner you do it, the easier they'll adjust. So I would just don't be in denial, educate yourself, and make those decisions sooner than later. Those would be my top 3 things.
Yeah, and that's really good advice. That really is. And I do want to share with our listeners, if they don't know where to reach out to get education around the country, there's Alzheimer's Association and the Alzheimer's Foundation. And they each have websites with 800 numbers as a hotline. And also you can, I believe, plug in wherever you're living, your city, state, or zip code to get a local chapter. Well, gosh, Shellie, we are almost to the end of our show. This has been a great 30 minutes. Thank you so much for being our guest.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, you're welcome. I want to give you time and for your final thoughts, and also please share with our listeners how they can reach you and the memory care assisted living community that you now work for.
Yes, that would be Northwoods Village of Edison Lakes. We are the area's first assisted living community dedicated to memory care. We take a very resident-centered approach to everything that we do, from our purposeful design of our building to our daily planned activities, both in group settings and individual one-on-one settings. We not only are we a community, but we are here as a resource for our community where we live. We provide free educational events on a monthly basis. We do 1 to 2 every month, and they're all geared around the caregiver of a loved one who's been diagnosed with Alzheimer's or some sort of memory impairment. We want to be a resource, and we want people in the area where we live to feel comfortable in calling us for any question. It doesn't have to be just if they have a loved one that they want to move into our community. Of course, our community is going to be, it's going to set the new standard in care for memory-impaired folks. And I'm just so thankful and grateful to be a part of such a great new development here in northern Indiana. We're here to provide love and care to our residents. We want to guide them and inspire them, but help them to be as independent as possible, and so that they can feel fulfilled and empowered and have self-esteem, so that they still feel valued. That's one of our main goals, and those 3 principles of guiding, caring, and inspiring are the 3 things that will guide every person who's a part of Northwoods Village as we take care of our residents. So if anybody needs any assistance in any way, I can be reached through our website, which is northwoodsmemorycare.com. I can also, you could email me. My email address is Kermin, Kermin, at northwoodsmemorycare.com. So, and if it's somebody local and they want to call, or not local and they want to call, our phone number is area code 574-247-1866. And again, my name is Shellie Kermin, and all of us at Northwoods Village are here to help in any way possible.
Well, thank you, Shellie. And I'm not sure if we have mentioned this. I'm going to say it, and if I repeat myself, forgive me. Northwoods Village at Edison Lakes is actually in northwest Indiana, close to the University of Notre Dame, South Bend, Indiana. Mm-hmm. Now, I think it's in Mishawaka, Indiana, actually.
Yes, correct, it is.
So that is the location. Well, Shellie, I want to thank you today for being my guest. It has been great talking with you, and I hope that each person listening will share the information they learned today with their family, their friends, neighbors, and colleagues. For help regarding other issues related to your aging parents, please visit my website and blog at transitionagingparents.com. You can also reach me at dale.carter@transitionagingparents.com and find me also on Facebook and Twitter. For those of you in the chat room, please leave any questions you have for me, and I will post the answers in my next blog. So from Shellie Kermin and Dale Carter, thanks for listening, and good night.